That morning, when he looked down from the helicopter, he did not see the enemy. What he saw would leave him alone for 30 years. March 16th, 1968, South Vietnam. The clock had barely passed 7 in the morning, and humidity clung to everything like an invisible shroud. Hugh Thompson Jr. sat in the cockpit of his OH-23 reconnaissance helicopter, listening to the high-pitched whine of the engine. He was 25 years old, born in Georgia. He had started his military career in the Navy before transferring to the Army as a helicopter pilot. Sweat beaded on his forehead, but that was ordinary in Vietnam. The heat, the moisture, the exhaustion, all ordinary. That morning was supposed to be ordinary too. At least that is what he thought. The reconnaissance mission was simple: provide aerial support for Charlie Company's ground operation, identify enemy positions, report coordinates if necessary. Thompson lifted off with door gunner Lawrence Colburn and crew chief Glenn Andriotta. The rotation of the blades cast shadows over the rice paddies below, creating a mosaic of green and brown. In the distance, the village of My Lai, marked on American military maps as Pinkville, waited in silence. Thompson would never forget that name. On the first pass, something caught his attention. Below, at the edge of the rice paddies, a motionless figure lay in the mud. As he descended, he saw it was a woman, face down. Blood pooled around her. Thompson considered the possibility of a Viet Cong trap, perhaps a sniper ambush, but there was no gunfire. No reports of contact came through the radio. He dropped lower. The woman was not moving. A child lay beside her, also motionless. Thompson frowned. He directed the helicopter toward the village. Below, he could see soldiers from Charlie Company. They were moving, but something was wrong. Something was deeply wrong. In the center of the village, there was a ditch. When Thompson flew over the ditch, he saw what was inside. Bodies, 10, 20, perhaps more, piled on top of each other, motionless, lifeless. Women, children, elderly, unarmed villagers. American soldiers stood at the edge of the ditch, rifles in their hands. Thompson's stomach turned. This was not combat. In combat, both sides carry weapons. The people below held nothing. They were not running, they were not hiding, they were already dead or they were about to be. Thompson circled the helicopter once more. The same scene repeated itself across different parts of the village. Huts were burning. Corpses were scattered across the fields. American soldiers, his own soldiers, men wearing the same uniform he wore, were systematically killing unarmed civilians. At that moment, Hugh Thompson Jr. faced a choice. He could look away. He could turn off the radio, turn the helicopter around, file no report. Many things stayed hidden in Vietnam. No one would ask a reconnaissance pilot for an explanation. No one would say, "Why didn't you intervene?" He could remain silent. He did not remain silent. Thompson lowered the helicopter. Below, at the edge of the ditch, he saw movement. Among the bodies, someone was stirring. A child. Maybe 4 years old, maybe 5. Covered in blood, but still moving. Not yet dead. Thompson opened the radio and contacted the ground unit. He gave the coordinates of the ditch. He reported that wounded civilians needed medical evacuation. No response came. After a while, the ground unit's commander, Lieutenant William Calley, came on the radio. Thompson explained the situation. He said there were survivors in the ditch. He said they needed medical evacuation. Calley's response was brief. He told Thompson to mind his own business. Thompson turned off the radio. He landed the helicopter near the ditch. He stepped out with door gunner Colburn and crew chief Andriotta. They walked toward the ditch. Among the bodies, the small child was still moving. Andriotta climbed into the ditch. He lifted the child into his arms. Blood was everywhere. The child's eyes were open, but he said nothing. Perhaps he was in shock. Perhaps he could not understand. Perhaps he did not want to understand. Thompson carried the child to the helicopter, but it was not over. On the eastern side of the village, in front of a bunker entrance, another group of civilians huddled together. Women, children, and elderly, maybe 10, maybe 15 people, pressed against each other, waiting in terror. They could see the American soldiers approaching. They knew what was coming. Thompson landed the helicopter near the bunker. Below, a group of soldiers was advancing toward the civilians. Their rifles were ready. Their intent was clear. Thompson made a decision. He turned to Colburn. There was no tremor in his voice, only cold resolve. He told Colburn that if those soldiers opened fire on the civilians, Colburn was to open fire on them. Colburn paused for a moment. He tried to understand what Thompson was saying. An American officer was ordering another American soldier to fire on their own troops. This order could be considered treason under military law. It was grounds for execution. Colburn nodded. He swung the machine gun around. He pointed the barrel at the approaching American soldiers. Thompson stepped out of the helicopter. He walked toward the civilians. He raised his hands. He signaled for the soldiers to stop. He approached them. Silently, but with determination, he positioned himself between the soldiers and the villagers. The soldiers hesitated. Thompson made a radio call. He summoned an armed helicopter, a Huey, from the area to evacuate the civilians. The pilot objected. This was not standard procedure. Civilian evacuation was not his mission, Thompson insisted. The Huey arrived. One by one, they loaded the civilians onto the helicopter. Women, children, elderly, 16 people. The helicopter lifted off. Thompson watched them disappear into the sky. The sun was rising. Columns of smoke rose from the village. In the distance, sporadic gunfire echoed. That day in My Lai, more than 500 civilians were killed. Women, children, infants. Mass rapes occurred. Bodies were burned. The village was erased from the map. Hugh Thompson Jr. and his crew saved 16 people. But this was only the beginning of the story. When Thompson returned to base that evening, he reported what he had seen. He told them everything. The ditch, the bodies, the soldiers firing on civilians, Callie's order, his own intervention. His commanders listened. Then nothing happened. The report was filed. Perhaps it was read, perhaps not. Thompson waited for some time. He expected an investigation to be launched. He hoped someone would be held accountable. Nothing happened. Months passed. Thompson left Vietnam. He returned to America. He got married. He had children. He tried to build a normal life. But the images in his head would not leave. The bodies in the ditch, the child who stirred, the fear in the civilians' eyes. Every night, the same scene. In 1969, when news of My Lai leaked to the press, everything changed. A journalist named Seymour Hersh exposed the massacre to the world. Photographs were published. Witnesses spoke. America was shocked. The Pentagon launched an investigation. Thompson was called to testify before Congress. He told them everything, again. This time on the record. This time with the whole world watching. And at that moment, Hugh Thompson Jr. transformed from hero to traitor. After his testimony before Congress, Thompson's life became a living hell. Letters began to arrive. Death threats. Notes filled with hatred. Some were unsigned, others were openly signed. An American soldier had betrayed his own troops. He had committed treason against his country. He had turned his weapon on his own blood to protect the enemy. At least that is how they saw it. Thompson's family became targets too. His wife received threats. His children were ostracized at school. His former neighbors in Georgia no longer spoke to him. The man they once called a hero pilot was now a traitor. A congressman took the floor and demanded that Thompson be court-martialed. The charge, turning his weapon on his own soldiers, treason, undermining military discipline. An investigation was opened, but the charges were dropped. Because what exactly had Thompson violated? Protecting civilians? Complying with the laws of humanity? Stopping a massacre? They found nothing. But this did not mean Thompson was vindicated. He may not have been officially charged, but unofficially he had been convicted. Within the army he received no promotions. His assignments shrank. His fellow soldiers abandoned him. He heard whispers in the corridors. He sat alone in the mess hall. Years passed. Lieutenant William Calley, the officer who directed the massacre at My Lai, was tried by court-martial. He was found guilty of murdering 22 civilians. He was sentenced to life in prison, but the sentence was reduced to 3.5 years. Then it was converted to house arrest. A few years later, he was pardoned. More than 500 civilians had died. Only one person was punished. 3.5 years of house arrest. Thompson waited for justice. It never came. Years turned into a decade. A decade turned into 2. Hugh Thompson Jr. lived quietly. He worked as a helicopter instructor in Louisiana. He rarely spoke about Vietnam. He did not tell his own story. No one was asking anyway. The war was meant to be forgotten. My lie was meant to be forgotten. Thompson was meant to be forgotten. But he could not forget. Every year, when March 16th arrived, the same images came alive. The bodies in the ditch, the child who stirred, the fear in the civilian's eyes, Colburn's machine gun, his own order. Some nights he woke up drenched in sweat. Thompson once said in an interview that what he did was not heroism. He said he simply did what was right. He said he saw no other choice. But the world for 30 years thought otherwise. The year was 1998, the 30th anniversary of My Lie. The United States Army held a ceremony for Hugh Thompson Jr. He was awarded the Soldier's Medal. The ceremony took place at the Pentagon. Generals gave speeches. Thompson and his crew, Colburn and Andreotta's family, received a standing ovation. Andreotta had died on another mission shortly after returning from Vietnam. His family accepted the medal on his behalf. When Thompson approached the podium, the room fell silent. He did not speak. He only bowed his head. Perhaps gratitude, perhaps exhaustion, perhaps the weight of 30 years. The ceremony ended. Journalists asked Thompson, "What did this late recognition feel like?" Thompson paused for a moment. Then he answered quietly. He said the medal was not for him. It was for those who died at My Lie. He said he knew it was too late, but it still meant something. Hugh Thompson Jr. died of cancer in 2006. He was 62 years old. A full military funeral was held. The Army had finally accepted him as a hero. It had taken 30 years. It had taken a lifetime. Lawrence Colburn, the door gunner, who on Thompson's order that morning had turned his weapon on his own soldiers, spoke at the funeral. He said Thompson taught him what courage truly meant. He said doing the right thing is sometimes the loneliest path of all. In the village of My Lie, there is a memorial today. More than 500 names are carved into it. Women, children, infants. And in a note, the names of 3 American soldiers, Hugh Thompson Jr., Lawrence Colburn, Glenn Andreotta. From the army that committed the massacre, the 3 who stopped it. Some stories tell of the price of speaking the truth. Hugh Thompson Jr., when he looked down from the helicopter that morning, made a choice. He could have stayed silent. He could have looked away. He could have refused to turn against his own soldiers. He did not. And for 30 years he paid the price. Threats, loneliness, ostracism, the betrayal of his peers, the ingratitude of his nation, but also the lives of 16 people, a child pulled from the ditch, a testimony that would never be forgotten. The cost of truth is heavy, but the cost of silence is heavier. This is an independent storytelling project and is not affiliated with any official institution or authority. This content is for storytelling and educational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice.